Hello, you are listening to Just Films and That. This is the podcast where we celebrate films we think deserve a little bit more love. Whether they're underrated or underseen, we're going to talk about them. I'm the host, Josh Hallam, and this week I sat down with the brilliant Taiwanese comedian Kuan-wen to talk about a film of his choosing, Down with Love from 2003. So give it a listen to hear what we think. Well, as I said in the intro, I'm delighted to be joined by Kuan-wen. How are you, Kuan-wen?
Hello, I'm very well because as a data recording is the first day in London that a heat wave's gone, and I'm really relaxed.
Yes. It's a lot, isn't it? Yeah. So you'll be listening to this in August. We're recording it in early July, and it's hot, isn't it?
No, but I was in Glasgow for gigs during the weekend, and Glasgow was like 20s. I was great, but I flew back.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm killing the environment, but I flew back as soon as I got off the plane. Oh my! It's like a layer of moist and all the heat.
Yeah.
Just like got because I was wearing a long trouser. I just got beneath it. I was just walking around with the oven inside myself. How is London so hot? I feel like you're the Stark family moved down to King's Landing. So like the south's really hot in it. But then London is fine now. But my friend in Berlin say that the heat wave is moving their direction, so they are a day behind us.
Yeah, I've got family in Berlin, and they've said similar things.
And all
Like
this
it's
is just to prove that
brutal over
I'm
there.
a proper immigrant. I've integrated into the British society. Always start with the weather. It's hot, it's cold, it's nice. Just talk about the weather, so they will accept you.
Welcome to this new segment following the relaunch, proving people's immigration status.
And
people's right to work.
Where are you?
But no, thank you very much for coming on the pod. So we're going to talk about a film of your choosing, which is Down with Love from 2003. So guys at home, if you've not seen it, spoiler warnings, but it is 22 years old, so you have had plenty of time to give it a watch.
Right? To pick something that I didn't even think it was that old. I just remember the film, but when I look it up, it was that old.
But it doesn't feel it because it's kind of timeless, right?
Yeah, because the whole industry has how to say that. There's not been a lot of progress.
No, exactly. Yeah, it's still very, very serious. So obviously spoiler warnings for that if you've not seen it at home. But tell the guys at home, tell them a little bit about what it's about, and then why have you picked it? Is it underrated? Is it underseen?
Okay, so what the film is about is a classic rom-com, and the setting is the 1960s New York City. Actually, in the film description they say 1962, and it's about a playboy male journalist who wants to prove a feminist book writer author wrong by making her falling up with him so he can discredit her. So that's the basic plot. But I want to say, when I chose the film, I wanted more to talk about Little Shop of Horror, and I've been advised and actually was told by Jack, sorry, Alistair Becker King has done it. And I was really angry. So I listened to that. I listened to that episode. I'm like, thank God I didn't try to, because he's done much better job. I didn't know it can be moved so much to the point it was like a satirical take on the American consumer society. It's like, come on, chill. But it's just like, but then he convinced me. I just thought I would never talk about it. I would just talk about how dramatic like Elaine Green's was. Sorry. Anyway, so this was my second choice. And the reason I chose this film is because I deeply fell in love with Renee Zellweger. But I have to say her performance in this film was all right. But I like her so much for the reason that I grew up in Taiwan, and we didn't have like a proper West End or Broadway, not even in our biggest capital city. So I never had a proper idea of how a musical would be like. My first introduction into that would be Disney cartoon movie. But to see that adaptation of a proper musical into a movie, and I still remember really well, will probably be Chicago. And in Chicago, that came out in 2001, I believe. And of course, there's a proud Welsh-British Catherine Zeta-Jones. But what caught my eyes were Renee Zellweger, because she gave me hope that you may not be a professional trained singer, but if you're a decent shower singer, there's some way
you can win an Academy Award.
Because I remember very clearly Catherine Zeta-Jones was heavily pregnant, and they were both invited by the Oscar ceremony to perform live. So that they're duet, like all that jazz. And Renee Zellweger said no, she couldn't. So Catherine Zeta-Jones, in the heavily pregnant state, performed, but not Renee. But she performed with Queen Latifah. I don't remember her. She had Major Martin. But
Yeah, she plays mom.
I
Yeah.
really, really love what Renee managed to pull off because no one expected her to be able to sing. And ever since that, I've been following her film, and that was kind of like the peak of her career, the first one, because she was nominated
Yes.
for Best
Yeah.
Actress the year before for I think was Bridget Jones, the first one.
Could be. Yeah. Could be. Yes. Or was it Cold Mountain?
No,
Perhaps.
Cold Mountain.
Yes. Around that.
No, Cold
Around that
Mountain is
time, isn't it?
2003. She won Best
That's
Supporting
right. Yeah.
Actress, but the first time she was nominated Best Actress was Bridget Jones'
For Bridget
Diary.
Jones.
And the year
Yeah.
after, consecutively, she was nominated as Best Actress again because of Chicago. And then that's why
Mm.
I try to follow every single film she was in. And because of Chicago and because of Bridget Jones' Diary, this film was heavily marketed. I remember how much it was sort of promoted. I don't know about UK or America, but even in Asia and Taiwan, this film was marketed as the thing. And it didn't quite deliver that. So that's in my mind. I thought, oh, I remember it was a bit of a flop, but I remember me myself quite enjoying the film, and that's why I nominated it. So I went on Wikipedia. It turned out really it was a flop. I think a budget
Yes.
about $35 million and a gross box office over worldwide was about 39. So it's not really.
Yeah, about 39.5 million worldwide.
Yeah.
It did. Yeah, so I think that is an interesting point. So I suppose I've never really thought of it that way. As obviously as someone who did grow up in the Western world, I did have that access. So I do remember this coming out, and I remember, like you said, they went quite heavy on the advertising because I remember really quite vividly seeing it on things like buses and and billboards and things like that. Interesting point you make about Renee Zellweger there, because I suppose we're looking at this film because she sings in this.
Yes. Well,
She sings
didn't
at
sing
the
throughout
end
the
of this.
film. She sing at the end of
No,
it.
it's not a musical.
But I
Yeah,
actually
but you've
think
got
this film would have been improved quite massively if they made it into a musical.
I mean it's very stylized as it is, isn't it?
Yeah, and to a point, you can say it probably the pursuit of style over substance at certain parts of the
Perhaps,
film.
yeah. So I mean, it's interesting because obviously you've got this is 2003, and before that, very closely together, you've got Moulin Rouge with Ewan McGregor singing and Renee Zellweger with Chicago singing, and then they make this together.
Yeah.
And at the end, they sort of tag on a little scene where they both sing, and it's almost like a little wink and a nod to those previous roles, I guess.
Well, it's not confirmed anywhere. It's not on the IMDb trivia, but I suppose whoever was casting probably would think that, oh, Ewan McGregor would be good as riding on the high of the Moulin Rouge role. Because otherwise, there are a lot of charming American. We know Hollywood has obsession with British actors, but why? Why this one, Ewan McGregor? And I think one of the fundamental flaw with the film is that there's no chemistry between Ewan McGregor and Renee Zellweger. So it didn't convince me.
Yeah.
I
know what you mean.
more in the chemistry between two other smaller roles. Between Sarah Paulson,
the David Hyde Pierce and Sarah Paulson role. Yeah.
Even though that was very caricatural or comical, that intensity was more convincing than two lead actors.
Yeah, it is. It is very convincing. Okay, well, let's get stuck into it then. So, just to remind you, if you've not listened before, we always start with the positives. We move on to anything we didn't like.
Sorry,
and then
I'm a very negative person. So I jumped straight in.
I'm just going to slag it off now.
No, where can I backstab someone?
Let's get stuck into slagging off Down with Love. No, we're going to start with the positives, and then we'll move on to the negatives, then we'll conclude. So are you saying it's sort of underseen and underrated, would you say?
Well, it's a good question because I remember it very fondly. And then I remember it wasn't quite delivered the sales maybe the Hollywood executive were promised or they promised themselves. And what are chances? Because I have Amazon Prime. This is not plugging for them, but I thought, do I have to pay somewhere to watch this movie again? It happens to be free as of day of recording on Amazon Prime. I watched it again, and I wasn't quite satisfied. I would describe this as a quite serviceable film, and I'll explain why. I think in the era of streaming, people are very used to watching movies at home right now. So without a really good reason, you wouldn't really be asked to go out to pay tickets to watch a film in a cinema. And I think if you're watching something at home, this one is fine because the plot is not overly complicated. And I forgot the term. I was just discussing with some other comedians the other day. These days, Netflix made some dreadful film, but it was made on purpose because they know you cannot let go of your phone. So you want to be swiping, messaging, checking your phone every now and then. So they have to make the film kind of bad. So if you miss something, you have no incentive having to rewind to catch up. It's made so
Mm.
like there are so many gaps, and the plot is constantly reminded to the audience because they think the film is a secondary viewing content. You're also interfering with your phone
That's
using
right.
habit.
Yeah.
This film wasn't made in that way, but the plot is fairly straightforward up to a certain point. So even if you miss a bit, like you go make a cup of tea and come back, you kind of know it's still the pursuit game. And so it kind of, for in the era of home streaming, it's a very home streaming friendly movie. At the same time, it was
Yes.
made to be a big blockbuster movie. So the budget into the styles, into the fashion, into recreating the New York how to say that city landscape in a 60 were
Mm,
good.
mm.
So visually, you wouldn't say it's a cheap film. So visually it was pleasing. It was just like nice. It feels like the first 30 minutes of the Barbie movie.
Yeah, it does feel that like yeah, very heavily stylized. I mean, if you haven't seen the film and you're listening to this, it's very heavily stylized and almost parodying the 60s, almost like 60s sex comedy. So things like Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, it's not, I mean, that's the 50s, it's not far away from that, or even something like Breakfast at Tiffany's without the horrific aging or anything like that. So it is very, it's parodying that throwback to 60s cinema, isn't it?
But some of because I Google and read a lot, I think they prefer to use the word pastiche rather than a parody
Yeah,
because
wait,
they are not really
yeah,
mocking, they are paying homage. They're kind of
that's
celebrating
true. Yes, that's correct.
with a
Yeah,
little bit of
that's a good way of saying it.
ironic take. And that's where I found, so it's because it's subjective, exactly the same quality, why some people really like it and when some people don't. And thanks to the research, I've convinced myself again, Peter Bradshaw is dead inside. If you don't know, Peter Bradshaw is the review from The Guardian, and his review was so mean in 2003. I mean, like, he gave really great review for All the Strangers or the Daniel Craig fucking old game movie. I mean, like, if his eyes is alley, he loved it, but the kind of self-indulgent was way more deployable than Done with Love. And he said like Ewan McGregor was as sexy as a stoy in a stowed in a tux. I thought that's way too mean. I don't buy.
That's harsh.
Yeah. But the overall visual really reminded me of, because this is where I'm coming at. I'm not a movie nerd. And a lot of places, a lot of reviews say that this is almost like extension or sequel of remaking the 60s sort of rom-com sex, non-sex movie by Doris Day and
Mm,
Rock Hudson.
yeah,
And almost like you can
yeah,
think
Rock
of
Hudson,
Pillow
yeah.
Talk, etc. I don't have those knowledge. So it doesn't have to tell me where it was trying to pay homage to those films. I just watch it as it is, see whether it entertained me. And for me, that reminds me of Hairspray, Austin Powers,
Yes, yeah, yeah,
and very
yeah,
early day, the gimmicky James Bond. So
yeah. I think that's absolutely spot on.
I'm not a sort of expert on American history, but even I can work it out. It was based in the 60s. Why? Because I thought this is very similar to Hairspray. And what's the setting of Hairspray? And they had a song called Welcome to the 60s.
Yeah.
So that's how this is how a gay boy worked out the film was based in the 60s.
But and it's got all those homages in it. So things like the use of projection screen, the use of split screen,
Split
that
screen
idea of the other
exactly,
on the
yes.
phone, yeah, on the phone to each other. Really stylized blocking in the way that they move across the set and the camera follows them, and the way they move is almost choreographed to be almost like a dance when they're talking. And then the way the characters speak to each other is like really quick patter, a lot of back and
the
forward
reason
and things
I
like
say
that.
about like the first 30 minutes of Barbie is that when Renee Zellweger and Sarah Paulson move, they will move in a almost like a SNL sketch way, like a sketch comedy acting rather than drama acting. And that's why I thought it was a specific, and it can be considered as stylized, sort of pursue a style over form. That depends on where you stand on that. It's meant to be a comedy, and I think the plot could be very similar to 27 Dresses, for example. I mean, like the actor, like the guy, the leading actor had malicious intent to a degree, but that he was won over. He was melted by love to a degree. Or when the gender was reversed, what was the one with Sarah Jessica Parker?
Not failure to launch. No,
She has to
The
help
Bachelor.
making Matthew McConaughey move out of his parents' house.
I think it's failure to launch that.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
those people who come in with a malicious agenda or like a different agenda
Mm.
ended up being convinced by love being won over. This is kind of similar plot, but this one really had a caricature, comedic element or comedic touch to it.
Yeah, I mean, so do you think, obviously it is a rom-com. Did you find it funny?
I find it funny, but sometimes over labored. And it
Yes,
really
yeah.
is if you are only looking for clips to put on social media these days, some of it will be quite funny, but just like a SNL sketch. And a SNL sketch in
Yeah.
other format can look a bit so out of place or awkward. Um, the other
Yeah.
reason is because I really liked Jerry Ryan and it was a Davy Hyde Pierce because what's his name?
Yes,
Yeah, David Hyde Pierce was Niles in Frasier, so Frasier's young
he
brother,
was,
and Jerry Ryan was Seven in Star Trek Voyager. I love them
yes, you
both.
are, yeah.
Yeah, I actually didn't know Ewan McGregor quite well because I didn't know about Trainspotting back then. So I know
Mm.
Abomination, but I didn't. It's a film with a lot of good ingredients I like individually, but when put together, the recipe didn't fully work for me. And it had
Mm.
I think on IMDb had an overall score of 6.1 and 6.3. I think it's pretty fair. Maybe it can be elevated to 6.5 or 6.8, but
Mm.
overall good. But I did come across a Neo Tag review just 2 years ago, and it says that it's been embraced again by the younger generation who shows a much more appreciation for this film than when it was out 22 years
So,
ago.
that's an interesting point. So let's come back to the scores in a little while. So I think, so this is not the first time this film has come up on this podcast. We've never done an episode on it before. But
Really?
in
I'm
2020,
not as
yeah, when we
original as
went,
I think I am.
no, don't worry, don't worry. So when we went into lockdown in 2020, sorry to bring it up, but we put out to our listeners to write articles and pieces about films that they thought were underrated. And this came up. And a listener of ours called Andrew wrote a piece about this, which was really well written. I'll put it in the show notes if you want to give it a read, and all about how he thought it was really good and it was really overlooked. It is particularly stylized, and I do think that stylization, a little of it goes a long way. So I think it's really, really well done. But like you say, you could definitely look at this and say it's style over substance. But it's not the first time it's come up before, and I do wonder if at the time it probably was a bit too close to Austin Powers or something like Scary Movie. In that, like you say, it's pastiche, but the line between pastiche and parody is so slim that I think people perhaps mistook it for one or the other. But I think if you look at it, I do think it's more of a pastiche. It's more of an homage to those films. What do you think of the acting in it? And what do you think of Ewan McGregor and Renee Zellweger? Because I think they work really, really well together. I do think that David Hyde Pierce and Sarah Paulson steal the show as having that chemistry with each other.
Like
But what do you think of the acting overall?
They almost had this Emily Blunt in Devil Wears Prada moment. I personally think
Yes.
the problem being, I don't think Ewan McGregor is the box office guarantee. So he
No.
has been in some. I actually Googled to use the AI function like, is Ewan McGregor considered
Yeah.
Hollywood box guarantee? And they say no. And the example they gave about he being in a movie that's a flop actually is done with love. So
Oh, was it?
yes. So I think the problem is that you need like big name to convince people to come in. But there's a difference between big name that can do their job very well as an actor and big name they just like people want to see whatever they are in. So
Yes, yeah,
so
you're like
you have Tom
yeah.
Cruise or Tom
Tom
Hanks
Cruise.
and Jennifer Lawrence, or to a degree,
Yeah.
what's his name? The one in the latest Jurassic Park. So they are actors. They just
Chris
pull
Pratt.
No, the late
Scarlett Johansson. Sorry, Scarlett Johansson.
So
Yeah,
not convincing. I can't even remember how to say his name. So you see, with Renee Zellweger, the funny thing is, 2 weeks before we recorded this, I caught a film I used to see in our like a music city store, and there will be a cheap like a blue like a red sticker cheap DVD no one wanted to buy, so it's just like one pound or two. I remember one, but I didn't buy it. I always want to watch it. And I saw it on Amazon. It's called New in Town. It was out in 2009. And Renee Zellweger in her career has made quite few films that never really soared to the peak. So she had this Chicago, Bridget Jones, and then on the
Mm.
other end she had Judy that won her the second Oscar. But in
Yes,
between,
from a
she
few
had
years
quite a
ago.
bit of downturn and some
Bit of a
hiatus.
lull.
So Renee
Mm.
Zellweger herself wasn't enough of a pull. Ewan McGregor probably wasn't enough of the pull. Adding those two not having chemistry, it doesn't sell. I believe that okay, well, Google also say Jude Law is not a better, but I believe someone else would have sold this film better. Someone as the Playboy, but because I
Mm.
feel Ewan McGregor approached this Playboy with like a thespian and like a British theater pedigree approach, but I want something a bit raw, a bit more grounded. Maybe just like a
Mm.
dirty American, like a cowboys thing too. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's interesting that he stays Scottish in it, and even though we know he can do an American accent because he's played Americans and things like that, he just absolutely goes down the line as being Scottish. I mean, it's interesting because I suppose, like you say, is Ewan McGregor a box office draw? Because on one hand, like he has done Star Wars, but Star Wars is the box office draw there,
Yeah,
not Ewan
yeah.
McGregor. You're not going to watch.
The box office, how the success he is in, I think he is less the reason why the film was a box
Yeah,
office
it's the product
success.
itself, sort of thing. Yeah, and I think that is absolutely a fair point. So yeah, so I mean, what else do you like about it? Then we'll wrap up the likes. Is there anything else you like about it apart from the
What I
way it
like about it,
looks?
because I was actually a bit bored halfway through, because I kind of rewatched the film to do this
Mm.
podcast. So that I thought, yes, everything is predictable. I don't want to put in too much spoiler, but there's some level of plot twist that makes it interesting at the end. And
Yes,
I
there is. Yeah.
personally think that it's so much more fun to watch the film now than say 20 years ago, because I'm so enjoying watching anything without a smartphone in it. So it's not like,
Mm.
not even like Gossip Girl level or not smartphone, stupid phone, just no phone, just like no cell phone. So they don't have to worry about how to text, they don't have to worry about showing the screen. The whole thing flows without smartphone. And the second thing I personally think is quite important is we are in an era of regressing feminism, in like the
Mm.
Generation Z women or young millennial sort of celebrate trad wife. So in an era culture of trad wife, we are having the same conversation. Are we still talking about women should have independence and have jobs and what? I'm fully aware we are two men talking about this,
Yeah. Well, yeah.
cisgender talking
Obviously.
about this. But I did see people commenting on. Actually, I think the problem was in the early 2000s. We are slowly leaving the innocence and the optimism and happiness of the 90s, because this was in 2003. But when it was
Mhm.
made, it would have been 2001 or 2002. And 9/11 happened in 2001. I feel like the noughties, the world was changing into a lot more angrier and cynical place. But the movie
Mm.
executive hasn't caught on. So the tone was still setting this film in a very 90s vibe and atmosphere. And I think after so many years just being cynical and angry, the world has become more fragmented. So you can find enough people, like a niche people, like and like a cult, to like this film as it is. There'll be lots of people who still dislike it because the movie, the stylization makes it a marmite. But after being so angry and cynical for 2 or 3 decades, I think some people they just want a good escapism, and this film is a good escapism.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way of putting it. It's a real throwback. It's a film that was made in 2003 as a throwback to the 60s,
Hmm.
and now because it's nearly 25 years old, it's a throwback to a throwback, isn't it? So it's we're now looking at like you say a more optimistic time. After this, films became a little bit darker for a period, and then they came out of it again. We had a lot of more gritty realism post things like The Matrix and things like that, Fight Club, and that's exactly right in terms of how the films were dealing with issues like feminism and stuff like that. Like you say, we don't want to get into it too much because we're two men and things like that. But I think that's a really really interesting point. Like the optimism is there, and now we're back to a time when people need that optimism, and I think that's probably what's drawing people back to it, as well as the fact that it
Yeah,
does
and
look
I
really
think people are
good.
looking for something to a degree slightly detached from the very complex
Mm,
reality. Because this was probably something that came out before, say, Girls. This was something before Dexter. I believe
mm,
okay, the characters are flawed, but they're not flawed because they enjoy killing people or animal. It's just a very
mm,
90s take on a rom-com. And
mm,
they didn't seek to overcomplicate things, the characters. So they are set as it is, and they enjoy a lot of like a retro hairstyle and clothing. Yeah, it was just a simpler set. I don't know whether the director or the producer really want people to find out how it is paying homage to those 60s sex film. but the film as it is was completely fine. So I would say quite serviceable, and it's as a good
Yes,
watch. If you are sitting at home Friday night, but can't be asked to go out, and on your own with your partner, with your friend, want to select the film, this will be a very good choice.
so what would you change about this then? Would you recast it? How would you change it?
Um, I would definitely recast Renee Zellweger because like the rom-com she was in that was Jerry Maguire in 1996, but that had
Yeah.
more to do with Tom Cruise.
Yes,
Tom Cruise
yeah.
was the absolute sort of blockbuster guarantee. Ewan McGregor, and I know British actors can do a good convincing American accent, but I think Ewan McGregor, you think that's Scottish. I think he was trying to imitate the early day, so the golden era Hollywood X-Men.
Right. Yes, like you say, like a Rock Hudson or like a Jimmy Stewart even.
So that's why it's not quite. So the accent was so, I wouldn't say wishy-washy. You can't place him because the accent was so weird. You don't really know
It's a bit
how
Peter
to play.
Sellers, isn't it? It's a bit Peter Sellers, a bit transatlantic.
Yeah, so even if you want to call a British actor, that sort of sexual aggression, I think Jude Law would slightly be more appropriate. But
Yeah.
I really think casting an American actor would have been better.
I think that's a really fair point. One thing I did notice is I don't know, Catcher Block, who's Ewan McGregor's character, like you say, he is very sexually aggressive. He appears to have Quagmire's house from Family Guy, where like all the beds fall out the wall and like everything, basically everything is a sex toy in his house. It's like absolutely, and I know it's because it's pastiche or like you say, or homage, but I mean it is a lot, isn't it? And I guess it's quite interesting to look at it now. It's almost like I wonder if with this film, if aging has actually been kind to it, because the more we've got into the post-Me Too era, the more it looks like a pastiche or a parody.
That could be.
Do you know what I mean?
Or maybe we can see what's Renee Zellweger before any sort of plastic surgery.
Yeah, maybe that, yes.
Now, Ewan McGregor has aged really well, but he did, I think he deliberately dyed his hair much darker because he's more of a natural blonde, isn't he?
Yeah.
I'm thinking, for example, maybe Jake Gyllenhaal was too young back then. Jake Gyllenhaal or Heath Ledger, Leonardo DiCaprio, they would have done a more convincing job. Actresses in the late night, early 2000, who would have been a good choice?
Would you also cast an American actress for the lead? Or does that not matter?
I don't think it has to be American, but I think the comedic elements has to be slightly more subtle. Yeah. So, but so no Anne Hathaway. I don't know how old she was. That is just too much. But
yeah, she would have been. Well, but yeah, she probably would have been quite young, wouldn't she?
Yeah. Would Emily Blunt be too young back then?
Perhaps. Yeah, Emily. Yeah, I can imagine like so 2003. You're probably looking at like peak first time round Ben Affleck,
Jennifer Aniston, Reese Witherspoon.
Yeah, I mean back then you're talking like peak teen sex comedy.
When did Legally Blonde come out?
That's 2001, I think.
Okay, maybe a bit 2001, too close, 2002. But I think Reese Witherspoon would have been a good choice for this character.
Yeah, Reese Witherspoon, and then as a guy, you're talking like a John Hamm or a Jude Law, someone like that.
Yeah. Or as I say, even Leonardo DiCaprio, he would have put it up. Maybe he would have wanted to stay away from this kind of rom-com, but he would have been able to do a good job.
But it's funny, is it? Because it's not that long after Catch Me If You Can, and Catch Me If You Can and this aren't too dissimilar in their stylization in terms of particularly the costume.
But I'd much rather watch another this than The Reverend. It was a torture. So give me my Oscar. I need my Oscar.
Okay, so we'll move on to talking about the critical reception, and then we'll decide if we think it's underrated or underseen. So just to remind you how the scores work, we're going to take the IMDb score, the Rotten Tomatoes audience, Rotten Tomatoes critics, and then we're going to average them out to work out the score. And then, as we've already touched on the box office there, which is about 39.5 million box office, which we wouldn't sniff at, but we'll decide if it's good enough for a film. So, Kuan-wen, how do you think it did, sort of scores-wise? Have you seen the scores? How do you think it did with the critics and the audience scores?
I noticed on when I Google, I think IMDb was about 6.1 or 6.3, which
Yeah.
I think it's kind of fair. I was,
Mm,
because I personally am rooting for it, anywhere just below 7 would still be fair. Anywhere 7.5 above might be slightly over, a bit
yeah.
too generous. So I would say
Mm,
somewhere between 6.5, maybe 6.8, maybe just to
mm,
7. That's kind of the right
yeah.
region for me.
That would be fair. Okay.
Mm.
Okay, that's interesting. That's very specific.
No,
So
but
let's have a
also,
look at this.
also on Amazon Prime, it's got like 242 likes behind the stars. And
Mm,
I think it's for, because it's not particularly flagged for me. Because when I go through, as for, I like rom-coms. It's not the first
mm,
genre, the typical genre I would go for, but it's not recommended to me, this film, not this one. I had to search for
yeah.
it. So
Mm,
given that, and he's got that amount of likes, I think it's not bad. I honestly think it's not
yeah.
bad for a film
Yeah.
that
Okay.
old. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's have a look then. So at the time of recording, over on IMDb, it gets 6.3 out of 10, which obviously equates to 63%. Over on Rotten Tomatoes, the audience give it 62% and the critics give it 60%. So that's
Hmm.
quite, that's a little bit lower. So that averages out at, if we round that down, 61% or, around 6 out of 10. So, I mean, I think that's underrated. What would you say?
I think it's slightly underrated, but it's probably because of the time. Because I say that
Yes.
there was a review from New York Times that the younger generation is starting to show appreciation again.
Mm,
So that
yeah.
specific is the accumulation of maybe the last 2 decades, particularly the notice to the 2010. And if we sort of change the starting day and end day, I think that in isolation, the review given now or these few years will be higher, even closer to the
Mm.
70%. Mm.
I agree. And I do think this would do better if it had come out in the last 5 years rather than 2003. I think post Mad Men, with a little bit of distance between this and Austin Powers, I think this does a lot better. So we're saying it's underrated then. We're saying it is underrated. Is it underseen? Should more people be, because it, like you said, that article seems to say people are finding it again. So is that article right? Does this deserve to be seen by more people, do we think?
I'm a bit on the fence for that because we are no, we are in the era flooded by
Just
information and
content,
everything and
content
content.
waves. Yeah.
Yeah, so I was very specific that, for example, if a cinema suddenly decide to pick this film and show it, and people ask me, is it worth going? I say, well, depending on the price. I'm sorry. I think it is a service, quite a serviceable film. And when you see it, you don't have to think over it. It will be a good choice. Just click on the
Yes.
button, say more time. You will enjoy it. But anything above that, I wouldn't want to stretch it. No.
No. Okay.
Mm.
Okay. I think we can say it's. I think it's. You can definitely say it's underrated. I do think. I think people now. I think we can say it's underseen because I think it would find more of an audience now, and I think the further away it gets from the time of release, almost the better it's aged in terms of the way it's pastiche and things. So I'm going to say I think it is underseen. I think we can say it's underrated and underseen.
Okay. I'm thinking it's underrated, under
Mhm.
thing. I don't have a strong because I think it provides the escapism you need watching a film. But
Yeah.
as a rom-com, you don't really reminisce over, oh, I wish they're still together. It doesn't provide enough
Yeah.
convincing element for that. So that's why I'm a
Yeah.
bit neutral on the second point.
Well, there we go. So we're saying it's underrated. We're a little bit on the fence on whether it's underseen or not. But thank you anyway for coming on. Really enjoyed watching it. Thank you, thank you for coming on. Kuan-wen, tell the guys at home what can they find? Where's your stuff? What have you got going on? Edinburgh's going on. I know you've got a podcast as well. Tell the guys at home a little bit about yourself and where can they find your stuff?
Yeah, so thanks for having me. So I'm gonna go to I'm gonna say the Edinburgh bit first. I'm doing my new show called Andrews Are the Worst, because I've realized that any man, actually, funny thing, after I posted about the poster, one comic messaged me that I've been saying this since the 80s. No one ever believed me. Thank you for pointing this out. And in Glasgow, another comic said, yeah, now that I think of it, I had known 2 other comedians called Andrew. They're absolute cunts. So that's why I'm going to quote it. And all Andrews are cunts. There's not a single exception, starting from Andrew Tate to Prince Andrew and the American Andrew Cuomo, who just lost the primary of New York. They can go fuck themselves. And also, I have this level of anger because this host is not called Andrew, he's called Josh. And I have
Yep.
2 horrible exes. They're both called Andrew, and they wasted
I
so
see.
much of my time. So I'm doing a ex bashing show with very silly title. I don't want to do those sort of sad story. I'm just gonna be relentless and say these 2 guys are piece of shit, walking douchebag. So if you enjoy that kind of comedy, please come to my show. Is at 4:30 p.m. every day, and in a year, how fringy is that? So enjoy the experience. Otherwise, I have a podcast called Comedy with an Accent. This is slightly more pedantic because I'm a non-native English speaker, so I'm really interested in how the use of different languages, your understanding of languages, affect how you deliver comedy in English-speaking world. Because when we switch, sometimes we have the glitch. I also look into how the audience perceives someone before you even try to construct your stage persona, because your accent gives you away. So I also interview British comedian having accent considered quite distinct. So I think this acoustic element is less talked about. People tend to focus on the visual confirmation of ethnicity or sort of the body type, body shape, etc. But I have a podcast really just talk about the interaction of accents and comedy.
And that's available wherever you get your podcasts?
Yes, I think so. I try.
Yeah.
I hope not in China. I'm not interested in that market,
Yeah.
but
That's great. We'll put links to your stuff. We'll put links to your website and your podcast in the show notes. Do check it out. We've done a Friends Day for Comedy with an Accent before. It's great. And best of luck with the Fringe. Best of luck with the run. Hope it goes well. Yeah, I hope you don't meet another fella called Andrew.
I know. I also fear if I say it too much, you'll become famous last word. So I'm gonna zip at this point.
Kuan-wen, thank you very much for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you.
There we go, another guest episode in the bag. Down with Love. I think Down with Love, well worth your time. I really enjoyed it. Quite stylized throwback to 60s sex comedies. A few issues there that we touched on, but I think it's worth your time. And I think time has been a little bit kinder to it than perhaps we thought it would be. Thanks very much for Kuan-wen for coming on. It was really great to chat to him. If you go into the show notes, check out his Instagram. That's where most of his stuff is. If you're up in Edinburgh, get tickets to his show. He's very, very funny. And check out his podcast and all his other stuff as well. I'll put stuff in the show notes. We'll be back next week with another episode. In the meantime, if you'd like to get in touch with us, it's filmsandthatpod@gmail.com. We're on all the social medias. If you just search for Just Films and That on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok, you'll find us. We're always putting stuff out there as well. We're also looking to do more of your listener suggestions. So if you've got a film that you think is underrated or underseen, get in touch with us via email or any of those social media DMs that you can, and suggest a film that you think deserves a little bit more love. Tell us a bit about yourself and a little bit why you think the film deserves more love. You can also do that by leaving us a rating and review. Within your review, providing you've given us a nice, lovely rating, you could say which film you think we should pick. And we will make sure we prioritize those, because obviously giving ratings and reviews is bloody lovely and it helps other people find us. That's all to be said, really. That I will be back next week with another episode. Hopefully Jane will be back too soon, but he's off doing his comedy. He doesn't like doing podcast records with other comedians. He feels sort of a little bit intimidated. But I wouldn't want to put any label on as to why that is or anything like that. But yeah, thank you for listening. It's goodbye from me. Cheerio.